Okay, so we're in lesson 15 of the CompTIA Security Plus certification exam. So this is explain risks management processes. So when we're looking at risks, we're looking at the likelihood of occurrence of something bad. How do we understand the different types of risks? What do we do when we have risks? What do we do as to regards, should we accept it? Should we transfer the risks? What are the different types of risks we might have? What are those kind of things that might contribute to us being not secured? So, but the first thing you need to do when we talk about risks is to first identify the risks. So risk identification is fundamental to management of risks. So you cannot say, okay, I want to prevent so from happening without first identifying what is going to happen. So example of the kind of things that can happen are malware attacks, phishing attempts, insider threats, equipment failures, software vulnerabilities, non-technical risks like inadequate policing or training. Like we normally say that you can have technical compromise and non-technical compromise. If somebody speaks to your employees because they're not properly trained and they leak out some information, that is a non-technical risk. If because you don't have a policy on ground, like I've talked about earlier on, and you were vulnerable, that's a non-technical risk. It doesn't have to do with any of your technical controls. Now, risk assessment evaluates previously identified risks to determine their potential impact on the organization. So here, some keywords you need to be able to understand for exam is what is risk analysis. So it's identifying, evaluating potential risks and the characteristics that define them. There are two types of analysis most of the times. We talk about quantitative and qualitative. So for quantitative analysis, what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be putting numbers, tangible values to each of those risks. We can say, okay, from 0 to 10, what's the likelihood of occurrence? What's the risks that we might have this so and so? We can say, okay, 9. So 9 is a very high risk, or 8 is a very high risk. 5, okay, it's not so bad, or 4, not so bad, but 10 out of 10, that's a quantitative analysis of that particular risk. Therefore, qualitative, we are saying we want to use some kind of subjective judgment. Things like saying, okay, there's likelihood, or there's likely, or this thing will happen, or this thing might happen, or this thing happens once every year. That's a kind of subjective judgment. Then risk assessment, we estimate potential risk level and what is going to happen by interpreting the data that you get from your quantitative and your qualitative analysis. Now, inherent risks are something you need to be able to understand in your exam are those risks that we see even before we start trying to mitigate something. For instance, if you run a Windows 10 or Windows 8, you have some inherent risks. Some of those inherent risks are going to be that you don't have, that operating system is not updated. That's not the most recent operating system. It has some loopholes. It has some vulnerabilities. Even without you doing anything, that is an inherent risk. Now, if you have a risk, how do you manage it? So there are 4 ways. You avoid. So at times we call it risk responses. You avoid. That's to say you don't even embark on that project altogether, or you don't get to do anything with respect to that, or you accept it, right? Especially if it's a bearable risk. Then at times you mitigate. That's to say you're going to ask yourself, okay, what are some of the countermeasures? Right? What are some of the countermeasures? Then at times you transfer. So transfer, that's where you now start doing things like insurance, or you give it to a third-party company, or you say this party want to outsource this to you. So you hold them liable for anything that goes wrong. So these are the 4 ways you can manage risks: avoid, accept, transfer, and mitigate. Then residual risks. Most of the time you're going to have residual risks. I normally give students this example. Imagine if you have if you have a storehouse that you have millions of dollars in it, and you have a fortified gate, a fortified access control system, but it's walled. Residual risk is going to be that around the world, there's still some vulnerability, because somebody can pour a particular chemical, somebody can just hit the walls of the building and it's going to be in. That's why you see some buildings, they try to reduce the residual risks to the barest minimum. Because the thing is, I'm saying minimum because risk cannot be fully eliminated. You cannot say, okay, we are 100% secure. There is no such thing as 100% secured. And it all depends on what your risk appetite is, how much of risk you can accept. And of course, your costs, your capital base will tell how much of risk appetite you can accept. That's why I say a lot of billionaires can take some kind of risks that some millionaires or thousandaires cannot take, because their risk appetite is kind of high. So if anything happens, they can easily bounce back. They have other assets, they have other ways to like get back on track. Understand the difference between risks, residual risks, and also your risk appetite. One thing you also want to know is risk register. So a risk register is a document that have all the different risks that we might have in terms of malware, Trojan, network, backup failure. All of those risks, we want to pen them down, talk about the details of the risks, talk about the severity, maybe 1 to 10 or 1 to 100, owner of the risk item. So who is in charge of that? What are we going to be doing against that? Then we do a kind of a heat map. Now, when we do most of these things, it helps us to be better prepared. So they said, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So these are ways we can actually have a very, very secure system. Then your risk threshold, these are some terms you should know, defines the limits or levels of acceptable risk. So how much can I take? Then your key risk indicators are predictive indicators for monitoring and predicting potential risks. Then your risk reporting. So how are you going to communicate this to management? How are you going to tell your clients? How are you going to tell your stakeholders the risks that you have? And that's why for people in finance, at times they talk about bad loans. They talk about the risk assessment for granting somebody a particular loan. Now, identification of critical systems. So in terms of impact analysis, the one way you can do impact analysis is by saying, okay, what are my key items, right? So what are those major stuff that if anything happens, is going to be very, very bad. For a hospital, for instance, you have oxygen systems, you have power, those are critical systems, or you have let's say patient management system. Those are critical systems. Those are not systems that you can do without. Of course, you also have mission essential functions. So those things that for some kind of activities we want to engage in, they are very key. They also have our maximum tolerable downtime. So this is how long, if you, maybe you're insurance or you're in banking or you are a tech, you run a tech platform or you have a particular website and it's down for some seconds, some minutes. At times the client can say, okay, maybe they have downtime. But I was just speaking to somebody a while ago where I was talking about an ISP we were using in one of our offices. And I told the person, our maximum tolerable downtime was just like 1 day in a month. Anything more than that, we had to switch ISPs. Because take, for instance, when you're having this downtime 2 times in a week, every other week, it then means you have to now, because of quality of service, you want to now use another ISP. So every company is going to have, or every client or stakeholders are going to have their maximum amount of time they can not use the service. Then your recovery time objective is going to be, when do you want to get back on track? What's like the minimum time? Then work recovery time, same thing for your workforce. Then recovery point objective, at what time do you want to make sure that you can get all your backup back on track and you can continue business activity? You have some metrics being explained here in terms of time. So these are like backup. This is server workflow. So this is maximum tolerable downtime. So between a disaster and here, when you should be back up and running, right? At this point, you have failure. Then your recovery time is from when this happened to when you have like a server trying to fix it. Then you might have some partial items working, but not fully up and running. Then your work recovery time is when everything you have is now up and running. And this is where you now have your full system up and running. So you should be able to plan your maximum downtime so that you integrate a system that is going to help you get back on track. If not, you might have very, very huge impact. So these are what we call, at times we call them SOC KPIs. We call them business impact analysis KPIs. So it could help you measure how well you could get back on track. Previously, we looked at risk identification and assessment. We said if you need to get, if you need to do risk management, first thing you want to do is to do risk identification, right? Then if you have the risk identified, that's when you can now go ahead to now saying, okay, I want to manage it. The another thing is the different strategies we talked about. Either you're transferring, you are mitigating, you are accepting, or any of those such strategies. Then, of course, we talked about the processes. I also talked about some KPIs, some impact analysis. Let's look at vendor management concept. So here we're saying, because a lot of things we're going to be doing are going to be hinged on third party, other persons that work with us or that help us to be able to deliver our service. We want to evaluate everyone. If you're a logistics company, you might be piggybacking on a payment company. You can be piggybacking on maybe a transport system. You can be piggybacking on something else. So that is your vendor. That's the people that help you to like deliver your product and services. So you have to actually look at them. You also don't want conflict of interest, right? So when you are doing vendor selection, you want to select people. You don't want people that is going to have so much risk, because it's going to actually impact on your sustainability, impact on your service delivery. There are some items I've gotten for you. So there are some vendor assessment methods. So one is evidence of internal audit. So you want to check if that particular vendor is actually having some kind of internal systems to check themselves. So do they have cybersecurity policies? Do they have some regulations? Do they try to meet some standards? Then we have independent assessment. So evaluations conducted by third-party entities to assess a vendor's performance. So this is now third-party, this is somebody else. Then penetration testing. So you want to simulate, especially for instance, and this also happens if you are going to be doing a merger. If two companies are trying to come together to render services, you might want to check each other's ability to be able to deliver service, right? So you also have supply chain analysis. So the entire supply chain, from start to finish, you want to check if there is any risks associated with the delivery of your service, both from selection, manufacturing, delivery of the service, everything. You want to check back to back if there is any risks. Then right to audit clause. So at times, some companies will not want an external person to audit them or to check if they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. So in your engagement with them, one way you can be sure that that can be done is to make sure that there is a contractual clause granting the right to audit a vendor's operation, financial record, security measure, because once they are vulnerable, you're also vulnerable. Okay, so you have quite a lot of agreement. You can pause this video and take your notes. So you have MOU, you have NDA, you have MOA, you have BPA, you have MSA, you have SLA, you have statement of work, you have rules of engagement. You can pause the video, take your note, very, very important thing. And you want to be able to differentiate it, because in your exam, these are questions, right? In most exams, you're going to see this. So you want to differentiate between an MOU and non-disclosure, an MOA and a BPA, master service agreement, They are synonymous, they are kind of similar, but they are clearly different. Okay, so let's look at audits and assessments. So some kind of attestations, you want to try to verify the accuracy, reliability of their controls, internal assessment, external assessment. All of these things are to make sure that your third party are your vendor are kind of doing what they're supposed to be doing. The penetration testing, we've talked about this earlier on. I said you have to do a security audit, a vulnerability assessment before a penetration testing. So in a security audit, you're trying to see what's on ground, whether they are following set standards and the rest. In vulnerability assessment, you're trying to look for loopholes. In penetration testing, you're trying to simulate an attack to see if you're going to succeed from the vulnerabilities that you found out. And you have, at times they are called pen test or ethical hacking, any of them. So you have known environments. At times it can be active or passive. You have known environments, partially known environments. At times we say ethical, gray, and black. So those are other synonyms for these items. Okay. I think I did a video on the channel to where I differentiated between red team and blue team. We tried to drop the description, the link to the description of this video once I'm doing the edits or in future versions. Okay, I think that's all for Module 15. So in Module 15, we've looked at risk management. So how do we make sure that we have a very good risk? For exam, one of the things you want to be able to understand is the different ways you can manage risks. You want to also understand some KPIs, some metrics in terms of RTO, mean time of recovery, and the rest. For your exam, also, you want to be sure to understand the differences between an MOU and SLA, and all of those kind of legal documents. You want to be able to differentiate them and to be able to distinguish them in your exams. Okay, thank you very much for having gone through up to this point. I'm going to see you in the very last module, Module 16.